What's really good? What's really good? What's really good? It is unfortunately Sunday Eve or Monday Eve, not Sunday Eve, but Monday Eve, and we're back in the house. The Hoodlums one more time. We'll be talking about again certifications, badges, all that wonderful stuff. Why you want to give those things to your students, and particularly with the idea that we're going to be using those kind of things for students. And so when we start to deal with that situation, I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. So we're going to. I knew that was going to happen. I had everything set up perfectly, Webs, and then one thing, because of the fact.
You know what? You know what Leonard Snart says about that?
What?
Make the plan, follow the plan. Everything goes off the rails. Throw away the plan.
Facts. So, yeah, we did respect the badge part one on Thursday and kind of looked at just basically setting things in Badger, utilizing Adobe Spark and how to use those things. And today we're going to kind of look at Badger with Canvas and a couple other little tools. And to start us off as usual, Webs, ask a software developer question. In terms of feedback with your job, like how often do you expect that? How quickly do you expect it? You know, how deep is that feedback? Is it very visceral? Is it kind of deep? In terms of you really need to do X, Y, and Z. Is there a lot of empathy shown in the feedback that you receive at your job? Like, kind of talk us through life as a software developer and what feedback looks like for you.
First, I want to say if you didn't catch the first episode of this, you can watch it on YouTube or Facebook or Periscope if you want to go dig for it. But like the easiest places to watch it are probably Facebook and YouTube. And you can get a direct link to that by going to our website, theintelligenthoodlums.com. To answer your question, feedback in my job. Well, depends on what kind of feedback. Feedback from code comes immediately and isn't always totally clear, but it's usually pretty good. Like if I am writing code and something doesn't work right, I'll get an error message right away that says like, hey, this doesn't work, which is nice. And reminds me a bit of video games because it is very fast feedback. Software development, I always joke, is one of the few jobs where when you get a different error, you celebrate because something has changed and you're a little bit closer to your end goal. As far as feedback from people goes, that feedback comes in a lot of different ways. Hopefully also coming very quickly. That's something that, well, at least my experience, this isn't every workplace, but my experience has been to both provide and expect fast feedback. So instead of sitting on something, if someone's not happy with something you did or you hurt their feelings or whatever, you would hope that they would come to you immediately. And likewise, if someone does something that I am unhappy with, I will go to them immediately and say, hey, just so you know, this morning at stand up when you said XYZ thing, that was kind of not cool because of these reasons or whatever. Speaking of which, stand up is one way to get feedback. So every morning in stand up, we'll give updates on what did we work on yesterday? What are we working on today? Any blockers? How is our story going? And in sharing those details, often you'll get feedback from the team that's like, hey, this is going well. That's great. Maybe you should go in a different direction. But also like, those are the times where you can ask people for feedback. Like, hey, I was thinking about taking this approach. What are your thoughts on it? And so that's another way of getting feedback. We do retros every 2 weeks. That's another way of getting feedback and providing feedback to the team. Just so that you can kind of think over a slightly longer time about what your progress is and then, share, hey, these are the things that went well. These are the things that we could probably stand to improve on. So I think those are the main ways of getting feedback in my job. And we do showcases for our customers. So we'll present like, hey, this is what we've worked on for the last 2 weeks. These are new features we've added or whatever. And that's another opportunity to get feedback from our customers. Always, feedback is always happening because that's the way that we get better at what we do is we are always getting that, hey, this is how things are going. I forget who I was talking to. When I first did my training, when I first came into tech and went over to India and spent 5 weeks there and worked with a team, we had like a faux product owner, and we were building something for them. And it was a client-facing site, like a website. And I remember after the first week, there was one person on the team who was like really good with like UI stuff and like visual design of things. Completely redid the entire website in the weekend, like did all of the visuals, like made it really attractive. The rest of the team was like, oh, that's great, that's amazing. And then I think when we presented it to the client was like, I never asked you to do this. Why are you spending your time on this? Like, I didn't ask you to change these things. You didn't consult me about doing this visual. You know, there's this idea that like, oh no, but I made this look better, so you should be happy with it. But because we never went to the client, the product owner, and asked them and got their feedback, they were not happy with it. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing where like, you can do something you think is amazing and looks really good, and your client can still give you the feedback that like, this isn't what I wanted. Like, it may be amazing to you, but this isn't what I asked for. So this doesn't work. Go do it again. And that's why it's important to talk to your customers and clients rather than like, and get their feedback rather than just assuming you know what's best.
So we spoke a little earlier today. I'm taking this like amazing class by Jose Calendar, and it's just really making me it's adding to how I perceive how the world works in a lot of ways. And one of the things he said that kind of echoes what you just said was essentially you are not designing anything for yourself. And I think a lot of times as a more right brain person, I'm like, hey, this is what I would want it to look like, hence I make it look like that. And a lot of times you're right. People are like, oh, that's really dope. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. And a lot of times people are like, that doesn't, this is my house. I want my house to look the way that I want my house to look, not the way that you would want my house to look. And my wife and I watch a lot of the home improvement shows and the House Hunters International and stuff like that. And like you'll find yourself saying, "Oh my goodness, I really like that." And the person that's buying a house is like, "No, get rid of that and this and that." And you're like, "Man, that was really cool. I really dig it." And so, kind of taking that approach where everything begins with that empathy piece, I think is kind of what you're saying there. Where hey, if we conversed with you and had a conversation with you, and I was able to convince you that my way, this would really do X, Y, Z for you. You're like, "Oh, I see it that way." Then you have agreed to allow me to execute my vision. But if you just do things, willy nilly, even though I am in the big, I'm in the group that's I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission in a lot of ways. But I think there is a space for you to say, okay, hey, Webbs, you want us to redesign your house? We just can't come in and say, I want it to look like a 19th century Victorian. And you're like, no, that's not the aesthetic that I'm going for. I want, X, Y, Z. And then we come in and, hey, Webbs, look, it's a 19th century Victorian. Does it look sweet? And you're like, okay, I didn't ask for this. Then we have a problem, right? So definitely understand that. The other thing, though, how do you see how you receive feedback on your job as being different than how you either gave feedback to your students or you received feedback as a teacher from your supervisors?
One of the biggest shifts for me going from education to tech was the realization that my ability to get feedback was within my power. I had not even thought about the fact that like I can ask other people for feedback. And sometimes it's difficult because, teaching can be so isolated and high speed that it's difficult to get a colleague to watch you, teach a lesson or whatever. But I was really conformed to this idea. Also, shout out to my mom who's watching. Hi. I was really stuck on this idea that the only way for me to get feedback was my supervisor comes in once or twice a year, watches me for 15 minutes. We have a meeting. That's the end of it. And so it really made it so that I didn't feel like I was growing. I think when I left education, when I got into tech is what made me realize that I had felt like I was stagnant in my growth in education because I didn't have those opportunities to get that feedback. And if I went back again, I think that's one of the things that I would look for more, especially now with everyone being remote and people can literally just drop into your class and like watch you teach a lesson for a bit, watch you interact with your small groups. You can invite them into your Canvas module or whatever to give you some feedback. But that was probably one of the biggest shifts. Was like, it is within my power to invite other people to give me feedback. I totally forget what your question was. Oh, and then asking for feedback from my students. That is something I think I did pretty well. I would put out surveys. I would just generally ask them like, what did you think about this? You know, did you enjoy it? Should we do it again? Should we do a different version? How can I make this better? And sometimes students have some really good ideas, and sometimes they're kid ideas like, oh, I think you should make it easier so that we can all get 100% on it or something like that. And sometimes they would give feedback where I would incorporate it and just test it out and see how it went. It all depended. I had another thought and now I'm totally drawing a blank. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, at the beginning of my career, I was really, really bad at feedback because I was like,
I remembered what I was going to say.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I also didn't think about or didn't know that you also have to be willing to accept and in a place to accept feedback, right? So if someone has some constructive feedback to give you, you kind of have to be in a mental space where you're ready to accept it. Because if your first thought is like, no, you're wrong. No, that's not how it is. No, you just don't understand. If that's the first place you go to, then maybe you're not in a place to accept it. And it's not really going to be beneficial to you. And I think the same goes for giving someone feedback. You have to make sure they're in a place where they're ready to accept it and open to it, because if they're not, then it's pointless to give it to them because they're going to be defensive and upset. And I drove people away by talking about that. But anyway, you were saying you started in your career.
You just kind of made me remember something, because what you just said is kind of important. And this is something that I had borrowed from a movie a long time ago. Didn't realize I had borrowed it from a movie, and then watched the movie again last night, and I was like, yep, that's where I got that from. So, if you are familiar with World War Z, all right, Brad Pitt. Shout out to Brad Pitt, University of Missouri alum. Shout out.
I did not know that.
Oh, indeed. Oh, indeed. Missouri alum. Didn't graduate. He's just an alumnus. He got 60 hours, so he's an alumnus. But did not graduate. University of Mizzou, though.
I just assumed that Brad Pitt was made in full form as an adult from the beaches of California.
Nah, he's from Missouri. So.
Oh, well.
Indeed. I mean.
Now you know.
Midwestern California, I guess. If you have not seen World War Z, the book is better, and the book is told in flashbacks from a survivor's perspective. This movie is an action movie or whatever because reasons, right? But there's a particular scene or a set of scenes in that movie where Brad Pitt, in the quest to find who Patient Zero is for the zombie apocalypse, ends up in Israel. And he goes and he talks to this guy, and like the thing that's really I just saw it your mom. The in the search for this patient, right? He runs into this guy, and Israel's prepared for the zombie apocalypse like nobody else is prepared for it, and he's wondering why. How did they know that this thing was going to happen? Like, how do you know this? Like, you guys have these everything's walled off, everything's there. And so he goes and he talks to this guy. So Brad Pitt works for the UN, and he has intel on this guy. He says, this guy's not an imaginative person. This is a person who's very pragmatic. Like, how does this guy, hearing the word zombie, says, okay, this is something that's legit. And so the 10th man is born, right? And this is a really dope concept. And this is a concept that if you're a teacher, if you're a software teacher, whatever, like, this is something perhaps to integrate into your process. And this is something that I try to integrate into my process when I talk to myself. Now, sounds kind of crazy, but I talk to myself all the time. I answer myself as well. If you don't answer yourself, then how do you know that you're real? I'm not going to go metaphysical there. But anyway, now, the 10th man, the concept is very simple. If 9 people agree on something, it's the job of the 10th person to disagree, no matter how silly it is. And that person, the 10th person, has to prove why they're right. So, what does that force you to do, right? It forces you to come to grips with things that I assume are correct, right? Hey, I always eat pizza with marinara sauce and cheese. 9 people agree. The 10th person has to disagree, just off GP. Hey, nope, you don't eat pizza with marinara sauce and cheese. You eat it with mayonnaise and pickles. All right, great. Divergent thinking, forcing people to say, this is what the actual factuals we're used to. And this one person is going to seem like they're off the reservation, might spark something in these other 9 people to say, hey, that's absolutely positively right. I've been looking at this in a very conservative way because this is how we've always done it. And I think that 10th man idea in terms of classrooms, and right now, that the 10th man should be yelling and screaming like, no, don't do it this way. Do it a different way. And people aren't listening to the 10th person right now, right? Let's take on the 10th person for, just to keep it 100. Now, the 10th person should be yelling and screaming right now. We have the other 9 people are ruling the conversation because it is more comfortable to go where we're familiar with, right? And so I think some of the feedback and that concept of feedback from that 10th person yelling, there is a different way, there's a different way we can do this, is a better way. What if we did it this way and experimented with it? Even if it's not right, perhaps we change incrementally what the status quo was. I think that's something that's really, especially given what I just read from our local superintendent about the reasons why we need to go back to school. And you're really looking at it from a perspective where there's a fundamental lack of imagination, there's a fundamental lack of creativity, and there's a fundamental lack of empathy, right? Because we're looking at things from a certain perspective. And shout out to Dr. Hessler. He's the reason why I'm a teacher in a lot of ways. He told me when I was graduating from Missouri, he said, look, you shouldn't waste your time researching. Go teach some little kids. There's not enough black male teachers. Shout out to Dr. Hessler. But Dr. Hessler in his sociology classes always started with the number one thing was, you should be trying to prove yourself wrong. And I think, again, that 10th man thing really kind of jives with that philosophy, in that when we're giving feedback, when we're looking at things and when we're accepting feedback, it should be, I was wrong. How can I look at this other person's perspective and say, I can see the merits of that even if I don't agree with them 100%. So that your comment made me think of World War Z. If you have not watched that movie, it's like $2 to rent it on iTunes. Go rent it on iTunes. And like, it's not the greatest movie of all time, but it'll make you think.
I actually had an experience like that. I was working on a project, and I remember I was in a feedback session with someone, and they said, do you remember last week when we were in stand-up and you said blah, blah, blah? And this was like the most innocuous, like, I have anxiety about like everything. And this was actually something that I was like, I barely remembered what this person was even talking about. And they were like, yeah, I felt like what you said came across as really condescending. And it was so interesting to hear from someone else that something that I had said was perceived as like really condescending when I could barely even remember whatever it was that I said. And that was definitely a moment for me where I was like, I had the opportunity there to disagree with this person and invalidate what their concerns were. And instead of doing that, I took a step back and said, well, while that wasn't my intent, apologies for how it came across. I'll definitely be more thoughtful about the things that I say. And I'll go talk to that person and make sure that, they're cool with, and they don't feel that I was condescending or whatever. And they didn't. That person also didn't remember. But it was a concern to this other person. And that was definitely one of the moments that was like, it really brought home that like we all really do have different perspectives on different things. And even though in our minds, we think there is absolutely no possible way anyone could not understand my directions, there's no possible way someone could misinterpret the way I did this particular thing. Like, it's amazing how different we are as humans and how our perceptions of things are very different. And I think about that a lot because, when someone's upset or just reflecting on my interactions with other people, I try to keep that in mind. Like, I may think I'm being totally clear, but it could easily be taken a different way or viewed a different way from someone else. And invalidating it isn't really the way to go. Like, that is their reality. So arguing with them about how their feeling is wrong is first of all kind of a jerk move, but also it's not helpful. I'm actually reading a really good book right now called Emotional First Aid, and it talks about how how to make an apology, and it's really good, and it talks through each of the steps, one of which is validating how that person feels and acknowledging the fact that you violated some norm of your relationship.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but
Oh, super dope.
anyway.
Oh, super dope. So I think that kind of leads us to the next situation. Like we are in an instant gratification world, right? Where I want to know immediately what's going on. You kind of mentioned that with the coding thing. Like the code tells me immediately, yo, that did not work. That did not do what you wanted me to do. I see a visual representation of I was not successful. I think video games is why they're very attractive to students, not just students, but people. I know instantaneously whether I was successful or I wasn't successful.
Did I make that match in Candy Crush or not?
So exactly right. And again, we're not even talking about like I'm not playing Diablo. I'm playing Candy Crush, like a more accessible game for people, right? Some games that's more of a would be a casual game for a lot of people, right? So video games keep us sucked in with that instantaneous gratification. Cool. I try again. Then I try again. I try again. I try again. Try again. And I can put it down, and I can still try again later on. Go ahead, Webster.
Even taking it away from video games, right? If you're putting together a puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle, you try to put two pieces together, you immediately know whether they fit or not. If you're working on, there was something else I thought of while we were talking about this. If you're working on like a Sudoku or a crossword puzzle, you feel the things, that part of the thing that's frustrating about a Sudoku is you don't get immediate feedback sometimes, and you're like, oh, I got to erase half the puzzle now because I don't have the feedback to know whether my choice was right or not. But those are other examples of, hey, there is a feedback mechanism there. There are pieces that fit together or pieces that don't. And you know right away if you've made the right choice or you need to change your mind.
Facts. So that
Websites, same way.
Making food a lot of times, right? Hey, I'm gonna make a sauce. I'm making a sauce. I give it to my partner, and they taste the sauce like that's nasty. All right, cool. Maybe I put too much salt in it. I put too much pepper in it. I didn't do this. I skipped this direction. Let me add this thing in there. So I mean, but the other thing is, have you ever refrained from giving someone feedback because you thought about their feelings?
Yeah.
Why?
A couple of reasons. And I think this is where you have to be careful and attempt to use your best judgment, because sometimes I hold back because I want to see if something's a pattern. Like, is this person just having an off day and that's why we had whatever issue we had? Or is this a pattern of behavior that I'm seeing from them quite a bit? Sometimes I know they're just not in a place, like I know they're not in a place to get constructive feedback right now. The other thing I've had to figure out is, like, if I have a lot of constructive feedback to give, I've learned that, just backing up the dump truck and letting it rip isn't really helpful. So I pick, like, what's the highest, priority thing for now, and I spread it out over time like manure.
So
Um
every time I talk to Webb, she's got a new piece of feedback for me. Like, yeah, must suck as a person.
No, there are good things too. I try to find the good things. But yeah, it's hard, right? Especially when someone's trying to work through like a big gap of learning. And I think this applies with students as well. If a kid's writing a paper and you go through and you red ink up their paper because they have all these mistakes, are they really going to be that encouraged to keep going? Like, find the highest priority things maybe and address those, and then come back and, fix other things later. And just with a note that, like, hey, there's a few other things, but we're not really worried about those right now. Let's focus on just these big ideas. Because I think providing too much, there actually is a thing where you can receive too much critical feedback and you can start to shut down and you start to disengage. There's this whole death spiral that you go into where even positive feedback won't help you pull out of it. I think it's called feedback burnout or something. But it is possible to give someone too much critical feedback and cause them to get burnt out and disengage.
That's why I like feedback from inanimate objects like video games. Like, there's nobody to get mad at. It's like the video. I can stop playing the game. But like
Mm-hmm.
people, it becomes you attach that criticism to the person, and you're like, I don't like you because you criticize XYZ, and you were
Mm-hmm.
criticizing, you weren't trying to help me be better. You just criticized me about X, Y, and Z, and I think that's where I was at the beginning of my career. Fresh out of college, you think you know what you're talking about, but you have no functional concept of teaching whatsoever. Um, uh, that's where you kind of get where it's like teaching is punitive, right? Where the kid can't write, so I'm gonna go and write, mark up the red circle instead of helping the kid improve. It's about showing that you were wrong, and that unfortunately is what I see a lot now with the online deal is, I ain't interested in helping you improve. I'm interested in pointing to you that you were wrong and do better next time. Well, how do I do better next time? I don't know. Do better next time. All right, I did X, Y, Z for you, and that kind of brings me back to that point that I've kind of become hackneyed, I guess, over the span of our shows is if you're looking at a situation in which 60% of your students are failing, perhaps you need to go in and look at the method by which you're transmitting the information and not, oh, these kids just don't learn, they don't understand. Well, no, if 60% of a doctor's patients were dying, we wouldn't say, those patients, they need to be a lot more healthy when they show up in the ER. You'd say, the doctor, your survival rate got to be a lot higher than that, right? And so I think looking at it critically and being self-critical, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I try to be reflective on, and I had to do that last week. A number of students weren't understanding a particular piece of how to use this particular technique in Keynote. I looked at the data inside of Canvas, like 50% of the kids in this particular class hadn't turned the thing in. Go in and met with the class on Friday, and I'm like, look, fam, what's good? It's like we don't understand how to get to this place. Wonderful. We do a mini lesson very quickly. This is how you get to the place. Wonderful. Oh, I got it. We were just doing this. Got you. Now I ain't penalizing you. I ain't beating you an F. Just change it and get it done. And I think that a lot of the mental health struggles that are being bantied about in our school district happen to come from a situation where students are frustrated, students are overwhelmed, and we are not again, we don't have the empathy necessary to say, okay, cool, let's pump the brakes. As you kind of have shown me multiple times in the past, like you gotta assume that the person is working at their highest capacity at this point. I'm not gonna mistrust you and say, "Oh, you're playing video games while you're supposed." This is why, like, I'm just gonna go on the soapbox. Like the Go Guardian thing, dude. That's some very, very, very interesting stuff to me. All right. And I understand the Go Guardian from I want my kids to be safe and stuff. But a lot of narc stuff that's going on with the Go Guardian. Oh, he didn't come to class because he was watching YouTube videos. And you're like, all right, why is he watching YouTube videos instead of coming to class? That'd be the first question I would ask myself. Not, I'm going to go and get this little 7-year-old boy because he's watching YouTube videos instead of going to class. Like, why is this person not coming to class? Why is he deciding to do things other than the actual classwork? Rather than taking it as, I got you, you're going to jail. It's, he would rather watch somebody play haunted house in their house than listen to my math lesson. I wonder why. Go ahead, Webs.
I feel like there is a different standard for kids for some reason when it comes to school than adults with work. And I don't know why. Because anyone who has ever worked a job spends some of their time checking social media or watching a YouTube video or texting with their friends. Like how many even now, how many teachers are sitting in staff meetings with their cameras off, probably texting with their friends, like, this is a ridiculous waste of my time. This could have been an email. So why is it that you should get that grace extended to you during a time when people are really stressed out and have a lot going on? Maybe that kid, that's what they need for their mental health right now because they just can't take one more thing. So rather than cutting them off with Go Guardian, I do appreciate the teachers who value Go Guardian for its assistive capabilities. I've seen quite a few teachers on social media who have posted about how they appreciate that they can like take over screens or see their student screen to walk them through things. That I appreciate. the narc stuff is a little rough because that really seems like a, hey, I'm just gonna like, enforce my power on you because I can, and not extending the same grace to students that you would extend to yourselves. Because this is, you got to figure, like, as adults, we probably have far better coping strategies, I would hope, than 7-year-olds do, or 8-year-olds, or 9-year-olds, or 10-year-olds. This is a major, like, this is like once in several generations level of event and trauma and stress. And yeah, kids aren't going to know how to handle it because they just suddenly got cut off from their friends one day in March. So maybe they need a little extra, hide and go seek YouTube channel or whatever.
I tell you no lie. Got a text message from a friend of mine. She said, "Hey, I'm using Go Guardian. Does that mean the district can see me too?" I'm like, it's very interesting you're concerned about your own privacy, right? You don't care about this little kid's privacy, but you're very concerned about the district not being able to see what's going on in your life, right? And it was very very telling, right? That again, my set of concerns are here. This is very important to me that no one knows what websites I'm visiting or what I'm doing or anything like that. But this little kid, I'm gonna invade this kid privacy anytime that I want to. That's messed up, yo. And how many kids do I am? And this happened last week. There are parents who are using their kids' devices, right? So if that kid is still logged into their school district account and that parent decides to go and search their bank records or anything else and forgets, oh my God, my kid is still logged into the device, there's some other little very interesting things that can pop off there as well. So um, while again, I think those who are assisting people right on, assisting the kid, you're trying to help the kid out. Those who are sitting there peeping Tom, oh my goodness, you didn't do what you needed to do. If that level of invasion was applied to teachers, I don't know anybody in my personal sphere that would not have received all kind of demerits. And you were watching a Facebook video when you were supposed to be at work, you was playing Xbox or whatever else you were doing, but me included. Bam, when I finish my little things, I either take a nap or I got 5 billion other things that I'm doing. But it's not all sitting in, I'm going to wait for some kid to pop back on this Google Meet so I can, nah, fam, all my stuff is recorded already. So the kids know exactly what they're supposed to do. I'm going to sit there and be captive to I mean, anyway, we're going off topic. Let's get back
A little bit.
Let's get back
Although it does speak to a larger issue. So digital privacy is a real digital citizenship issue. And I think that there's a lack of tech literacy for the average adult around, because there's that whole argument of like, well, if you don't have anything to hide, well, what if someone's making inferences about things that they see that don't necessarily apply to you, things that you're searching for or whatever? It shouldn't be someone else's right to go through your digital history and see what's going on.
And you can look at what you want to look at as an adult. I mean, I think that there's what we don't want is people like you said going and intimating because of certain things that happen on your machine that you are a certain way or not a certain way or whatever's going on. Lord knows, and I'm perceiving that yo fam, when I watch a movie, my device is in my hand. I'm googling the actors in the scene. And that may lead me to all kind of different places where that actor got in trouble and they were looking at so and so and this happened. And if you looked at my search history, you're like, oh my God, this is the worst teacher in history. Look at his web history. Oh my God, this is crazy. But I just followed some breadcrumbs from this actor to their activities or whatever. And so I think you get into this very gray area in which people are, as teacher, I have the right to delve into this person's life because you're in my class and I have control of you. But the district, no, you can't look at my stuff because I'm an adult and I'm a grown person. You can't do it. That gets weird.
By the way, shout out to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, who's doing really great things around digital privacy.
Big shout outs to them there. I've never heard of them before. Shout out to Web knowing
that
they're doing with
they do a lot with digital privacy, with internet freedom. Like, they're a really solid organization. They have a lot of like tools for staying safe and maintaining your privacy, using fully encrypted like messengers like Signal, and really a lot of great education around how to make sure that when you're online securely.
VPNs, homies, VPNs, man. We talked a little bit on Thursday about mastery as a ladder as well. You got to, if you could rehash Webb your experience with the karate in New York and kind of that situation?
Yeah. As a 36-year-old, I decided that I wanted to embark on starting karate as an activity. I wanted to learn some kind of hand-to-hand combat because my whole goal is I've been preparing for the zombie apocalypse, just to bring it back to World War Z. And the thing nearest to me, the hand-to-hand combat nearest to my apartment at the time, was a karate studio. And also, I was super motivated by getting all the different colored belts. And so I started in June, I think. And by October, I had October 31st, in fact, I took my test and earned my orange belt. And I was so pumped up. Like, here I am, 36 years old, 37 years, I don't know, 36, I think it was 36. Earning my orange belt that most kids earn when they're like 7 or something. And I was super pumped up about it because it just felt like such an achievement. Like I had worked so hard over the what 4 months or 3-4 months that I had been studying and whatever. Also reflecting, like I'm pretty sure I was the oldest person in that class by several decades, and I never felt weird about that at all. But yeah, it was a great experience. I wanted to continue it actually when I came back, but I couldn't find a studio that was close enough and had the right hours, and then COVID and whatever. So but just the fact that like even something as silly as like an orange belt was a motivator for me to want to engage in that activity, because it's like, yes, this means I can make it to the next level. And there's, we talked about this a little bit, like that means it's a common language. It's a common language of where I am with my skill level. And I think that's really what any kind of badging or certification is about, is when other people see that, they know automatically where you are as far as your skill goes. So I think the same applies. Like I'm Security Plus certified from CompTIA. And that tells you something about my knowledge. When other people see that, they're like, oh, okay, I know you have a certain base level of knowledge that other people without that certification may not have. It's just a common language for us to speak.
Your mom's is off the chain, Holmes. Off the chain.
Yeah, she's right. No, she's right. I am very ignorant of age a lot of the time. Like I'm not even ignorant of it. I'm oblivious to it. It's like I'll suddenly be like, oh,
look like you're like 12. So like, if it doesn't really matter, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. I've told you the story. So okay, real quick side tangent, everybody. Sorry. So, and it was around this time of year too. I may have told the story before. I was in my first year of teaching here in Clark County, and they had done this Thanksgiving meal, and they had invited teachers to also have this Thanksgiving meal. It was like turkey and gravy and potatoes and all that kind of thing. And you go through a little lunch line thing, and they give you your tray of Thanksgiving food or whatever. So I let all my students go ahead of me, and it was chilly too. Actually, I think that might have been that was the year before it snowed. For the first time in like 25 years or something. That's also a funny story, but that's not important right now. So here I am, like and it was Friday. So I was like in my jeans and my hoodie and whatever. And they were giving away gifts to all the students. Every student got, it was like a combined like Thanksgiving holiday thing, whatever. And so they were also giving gifts away to all the students. They got little goodie bags or something. So I'm at the end of the line behind my class, and there's these volunteers that are like giving us, like filling out our trays and whatever. And one of the volunteers looks at me and goes, "So are you excited for your toy?"
Indeed.
And I held up my badge and I was like, "I'm their teacher." So yeah, that's not the first time that's happened. But you're right. Yes, I do look like I'm 12.
I wouldn't. Like, had you not revealed your age, no one would have guessed your age. I don't think so.
Probably not.
So, that's
and when you meet me in person, it's even worse because I'm also really short.
So I mean, it's an interesting scenario. Like if he's probably getting carded. You can be getting carded. Like,
I am starting to get like worry wrinkles. I blame COVID. Like I do this a lot. So I'm getting like wrinkles. My mom has the same ones. If she's still watching, she knows what I'm talking about.
Indeed.
So you'll see me do this. I don't know if I'm thinking like I'm going to iron them out or something, but I try. Anyway, so mastery is a ladder. That's the point of that story.
So that's kind of the hustle there. And we kind of mentioned there are tons of different things to deal with there. I'm going to go ahead and bring Webbs into this scene. Give me just a second. There are tons of different options here in terms of like certifications and whatnot. I think the big two are it'd probably be uh, what we're talking webs. It'd probably just be Google and Facebook, right? Google and Facebook, Google and
Apple.
Apple. So I'm gonna just really quickly. Here's Apple's education deal right here. Great. You need to have an Apple in order to join Apple Teacher. You have to have an Apple ID, unfortunately, but it's there. It's pretty. It's all free stuff, and you get badges. You get a nice little Apple Teacher logo that you can utilize as well.
I
So
feel like that's something teachers can relate to too, because I know a ton of teachers who have gotten all the certifications. They're Adobe Spark certified and Apple Teacher certified and Google Teacher certified and everything. So like if you're one of those people, I feel like especially you should have some understanding of like why that would be a driver for your students as well.
actually, yep. So that's there, and then you have if you go to edu.google.com, all of the certifications are there as well. You do have to. So Apple's are free. Google's you have to pay to take the assessment. So the first one is $10. Next one's $25. And the last one, I mean, the other ones, this is how you become a Google certified innovator or whatever it is. So edu.google.com and find the teacher center and stuff that's there. So you have all the certifications there. You have all their programs. So they have the trainer program and the innovator program and the coach program as well. But it does cost money, and their validations are for 3 years, and you have to re-up. You have to take that test. They do. I don't like the aesthetic of their new of the icons for their new stuff. It kind of is ugly, but
There's an extension you can get that will go revert them back to their old extensions
so
for certain things.
I'm not a fan. I think it's kind of.
Several people that I know that are into design have talked about why those are bad from like an accessibility perspective.
And what did they say?
Because they all look the same. The pattern is exactly the same. There's no like differentiation between the different icons. They don't like visually make sense. They're too similar. So it's really hard to tell, like, am I looking at the male one or the neat one or whatever? I'm going to throw my own opinion out there. I was not a huge fan and did not find the Google certification particularly worth it. I was Google level 1 certified for a while, but it feels like a bit of a money grab, and which is sad considering how much of a billion-dollar company Google is. The information that they provide you is good, albeit it's a bit dry. So that's something. I haven't done the Apple Teacher one, but that's how I felt about the Google one. The content was just rough to get through, and I failed my test the first time through.
I've got Apple Teacher certifications for all of them. I mean, it's if you're someone who is, I think the plus side of the Apple is it's free. So
yeah,
even if you like, I don't want to spend the $10 or whatever, the certification lasts forever. There's no like, oh, it's 3 years, you have to re-up. It lasts forever, which is also cool. But if you're someone who's just getting their feet wet with the Apple products, it lets you walk yourself through it at whatever pace you want. So it's totally asynchronous if you would like it to be. It also gives you, if you're someone like we're both Apple English educators. It was very little that was brand new stuff that I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that existed. And so I got it all done in like an hour or two or something like that. Google situation, I never attempted to do Google Certified Level 1 because Google isn't that, it's not like, oh my God, I couldn't figure this out on my own if I spent 15, 20 minutes with it. I have taken all the trainings and stuff. I just never took the tests because like when I saw $10 to take the test and I got to sit there for like 2 hours and I'm good. Do I fault anybody from doing that? I think do what's best for you. If you think that's going to benefit you and how you do things, great. But there are a number of YouTube videos that'll show you most of what Google's certification test is going to look like. And they change things constantly. So, it's not static information. This information is going to change. So,
I think that's an important lesson to learn for teachers as well. We were just talking about this at work on Thursday, how like in tech, stuff is changing constantly. Like sometimes one day something will be one way and the next day it's completely different. And I think that's going to be the case with anything tech related, which is everything. So not only in your personal, your devices, your computers, whatever, but also like the software that you use, the tools that you use, those will always change. You need to have some foundational tech literacy skills to understand like what skills transfer from one application or program to the next.
Also, reading the update notes, right? So don't just click those things off. If something is updated, read what was updated and
I
say,
love
oh,
release notes.
like, okay, cool. Now it can do this. How do I do that? There's usually a link to an article, a blog post, a video that shows you exactly how to do this new functionality. Oh my goodness, that's really dope. I can use this for this. But if you're someone who just click, and you click off of it, your favorite little trick in that piece of software may have moved to a different place or may have been discontinued. Google right now is getting rid of the VR Tour off of Poly now, so that's going to be dead in July. So um, if you don't really read those release notes, you're not going to. Perhaps you build this lesson with that as the core of your lesson. Oh, you're going to create a virtual tour, and then next school year happens, and where's that lesson that I built? Well, it doesn't work anymore because that tool has been retired. So even in terms of preparation for, hey, I have 3 more months to use this functionality because it's going to be retired in March or whatever. It kind of gives you the ability to look forward in time and be a better consumer of whatever software or hardware that you could be utilizing.
I think a good example of that is I think it was the last OS update for Macs. They got rid of support for 32-bit programs. And so for some folks, if they didn't know about that, it nerfed their program. Like they just couldn't use it. I guess it didn't nerf it because then it would still be functional. But like it made it so certain programs weren't functional. And if you hadn't heard about that, if you didn't know about it, or if you disregarded it because you think it didn't apply to you, then because I know a few developers that just decided they weren't going to they didn't want to work on a 64-bit version of their application. So they just stopped producing their application. That's just, that's like the nature of the world now. You have to kind of get used to that. Like the things that you like may go away at some point and you just have to adapt to it. Like complaining about it isn't going to make it come back. So, I mean, sometimes it does.
I mean, you get enough people behind you and things change. I mean, LeVar Burton might be the next Alex Trebek, perhaps.
Oh my God, I want that so bad. Also, Alex Trebek is a very fascinating person. I just finished his biography. And did you know that he went to military school and then dropped out because he hated it?
No, had no idea.
Oh, he had like a rough life for a while. He's super fascinating dude.
I watched the supercut of him cussing off camera at Jim Jeopardy. That was hilarious.
So he didn't really drink and he didn't smoke. And when he was working, I think when he got his first gig in the US working on a hosting show, he wanted to fit in more. And so he decided to pick up swearing as his vice.
Indeed.
Yeah. And if you're out there and you feel heartbroken because of the loss of Alex Trebek, I highly recommend reading his autobiography. First of all, shout out to my mom again, because she's the one who sent it to me in the first place. Indeed. But it's a really good read because it's like this, it goes chronologically through his life, but it's in these like little stories, and each chapter, they're really quick, like short stories. And each short story is centered around like a Jeopardy-esque question. Like the very last chapter is what is life? And you can like he wrote it after he knew his diagnosis. He knew the path he was headed down.
What was it called?
It's called, oh my God, I'm totally drawing a blank. Let me look it up on Goodreads real quick. But you could tell that like he was at a point in his life where he had like accepted, he had an amazing life and he accepted like what was happening.
Interesting.
It is called The Answer Is Reflections on My Life.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a really good and a really easy read, like a really light breezy, which is also interesting. And again, we're off on a tangent here. I'm sorry. I've been reading a lot of biographies lately. I've never been one to read biographies, but I have read Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, not so much a biography, but one of his books. But it was about his life, so I guess pseudo-biography. Alex Trebek. I'm working on John Brown right now. And I thought I had one other one. Oh, Jonathan Van Ness and Alexander Hamilton.
Indeed. Oh, you're going old school with all them joints, man.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right, so representation matters. So last time we kind of looked at some places where you can build some things. And Avatars with 3 A's. If you're not familiar with this, is a really dope site to just spin up diverse images really, really quickly. So if you need some, if you're looking for something to personalize, if you're looking for to build characters around which you could like create your badges and things like that that are going to be representative of different types of students in your classroom or whatever, this is a place you can deal with that. It's totally free. Doesn't cost anything. You can make it a transparent background or a circular background by default. You can change the hair so that the hair does whatever you want it to do. I can add some prescription glasses if I would like. I'm gonna make them have blonde hair there. Great. Let me have a medium beard and make it platinum. I don't know.
Are you building Guy Fieri?
That does look like Guy Fieri, doesn't it? But
it really does.
Like I guess would it be a golden blonde? He kind of got those little highlights and stuff in his beard.
Yeah.
But you can change the clothes. So he's got a graphic tee on. Great. Let me actually make the whatever. And see, this is just like literally, I'm not.
Wait, you can put it on shirts.
Shirts and mugs.
Coming soon, Hoodlums avatar shirts.
Indeed. So that mouth, whatever, and make them dark brown. So bada bing. So taking those, creating characters or whatever for your classroom and whatnot, really easy. Download it as a PNG file, add it to Adobe Spark, add it to Canva, add it to wherever you're gonna deal with things. But that website is a place, and even if I don't have time, just randomize it. Great, come up with some stuff. I mean, you got like Nick Fury, if he was sunburned or something, I don't know. But if you want to take those and then add those to badges, kind of in the way that we kind of walked you through with Adobe Spark, instead of the icons in the center, taking the images and putting those in the center. So perhaps you're a vocabulary pirate here, right? Hey, I'm a vocabulary pirate. I go and steal words and add them to my own vocabulary here. I don't know, totally made that up. But you would create categories of stuff with the icons there for you. And those could be, you can make them literally in 3 or 4 minutes. All right, so that's there. Now, in terms of Badger and kind of looking at this from the perspective of, I'm gonna actually start back here. We kind of built the issuers and things in the previous show. How do we get this information into and connect it to Canvas? So I'm gonna show you some of this. I'm not gonna show you all of it because there are some like the keys to my Badger are there, and I don't want you to copy those keys and do weird stuff with them. But I'm going to show you what the keys are. And so when you go to Badger, what you're going to do is come over here to yourself and go to App Integrations. So you're going to see that little icon in the top right-hand corner, App Integrations. So you're going to see that by default, that Canvas LTI is already there. I'm not going to push that because it's going to show the key to integrate my Canvas LTI and my Badger. But if you push that, right now this is active, you push that, that's going to give you the key that you need in order to bind your Canvas course and your Badger so that your Badger and your Canvas course see one another, and says the badges that happen to live in your Badger are now available for your Canvas course. So that's where you go. You go to yourself up here, go to App Integrations, you'll see the Canvas LTI up there, and you'll simply click on it. It'll show you the keys or whatever and give you the ability to bind it to your Canvas course. So, and I kind of did that where I didn't want to do it. Here's Canvas here, and I'm going to go here home to this workroom. All right, so here's that front page of my deal here, my workroom, wonderful, fine, dandy. And we're going to go and look at the bottom of the screen here. You're going to see the word settings there, right? So bottom, you have all your stuff there at the bottom where it says settings. You get that settings deal. You're going to go to apps up here at the top and not installed. I'm going to type Badger there. Great. And you're going to use, because you're in the United States, Badger US, or either one of these are going to work. Doesn't really matter what you want. Actually, it's this one because this is the pro version. This is the one you're going to deal with, the LTI. You click that. Once you do that, hit the Add App button. We hit the Add App button. The consumer's key and the shared secret, that's where this information is. So that's here. Those pieces of information are going to be here inside that Canvas LTI. And you're going to copy that information and you're going to throw that information inside of those spots and then hit the add app button, and that will connect your Badger and your Canvas. So again, you are going to go inside of Badger when you're ready. Up here in the top right hand corner, click, and when you click there, it's going to say app integrations. You click app integrations, and you'll see Canvas LTI there. That's going to give you the information, the consumer key and the shared secret. You'll put both of those inside there, hit add app, and it'll connect your account. That'll give you access to all of your badges and whatnot. All right. So that is like the basic, that's step number one. Got to have that done. If you don't do that, it is not going to see all the badges that you have in there. Remember, if you decide not to do this at all, and we went over this the last time, this kind of to remake it. If I come here and say, yo, I want to give that badge to my students, I don't have to do that just through Canvas. I can click in and say, cool, award badge, recipient names. I can put all my kids' names inside there, whatever. I can do that by email address. I'm going to put my kid's email address inside here. Bob Jones, I know Bob Jones' email address. God bless you, whatever. It's going to have my date there and everything like that. I can write the evidence. This is the reason why Bob is receiving this. Any additional evidence that I need. And then if there's an expiration date, I can do that as well. Also, if I would like to go and say, you know what, I want to go and award this by a number of different, to a number of different students, I can also upload the CSV file and do that same thing. All right. So you do not have to connect your Canvas instance. You can do so if you would like. It's going to make it a lot easier for you because Canvas can automatically set things up for you. And so what does Canvas look like with that? I'm going to use that one. Still working on that bad boy.
I just want to jump in real quick and say, you'll probably see CSV around a lot more the more that you're dealing with like things online. If anyone's wondering, CSV is comma separated value, and basically it's just a text file where everything is separated with commas. That's it.
I thought it was more magical than that.
It is not. Like, there are headers in like the first line, but beyond that, it's just a list of words or whatever separated by commas. It uses commas as the delimiter. That's all it is. And you can bring it into any spreadsheet program and it can read it just fine. Excel, numbers.
Like the PDFs of
sheets.
Of Excel.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good comparison. It is the PDF of Excel.
Indeed. Or spreadsheets, rather. So what are we talking about with the badges, right? So great. I can add those badges as condition to any of the modules that I have as a conditional situation, right? So if the kid finishes XYZ, they receive this badge. I've been branded. It requires some evidence for completion. That means you turn your assignment in or whatever. God bless you. Now, how do we do this like in the simplest way possible? So if we go to our modules and say, in terms of their comic strips here, great. I'm going to give them a badge if they built their comic strip head in Pixton. So I'm going to hit the plus sign there. And when I get the plus sign inside here, I'm going to go here to external tool. When I get the external tool, what tool do I want? I want that Badger United States. Great. Let's add the item. And you'll see submit badge evidence. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit the edit button there. And I don't want it to say submit badge evidence. I want to say it like, claim your badge. All right, whatever. Doesn't matter. Great. Fine. Update. All right, cool. I'm going to click in there. All right, cool. So you're going to notice if I just click inside there, it says no completion badges have been set for this module. Choose a badge and badges configuration page available in your course navigation. Okay, I got to set something up too. So if you do this, you just click on it. So once I have this thing set up here, if you just click on it, it's not going to give you the ability to set that badge at all. So again, this is why we didn't do it on Thursday, because it's a lot of like stupid steps and stuff you have to set up in order to get things accomplished. So I'm going to go to my settings box over here and I'm going to say, all right, cool. I'm going to install my Badger. Great, fine, dandy. So everything's installed there. Everything's good. Yeah, it looks fine. Great, fine, dandy. All right, whatever. And I'm putting great, fine, dandy on the t-shirt webs as well.
This is what I said a couple weeks ago.
I've got to do that. So it's installed. Everything is there. Great. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go back here. So my settings is everything is there. Make sure it says installed inside there because that's the first thing, and you have to install it. I mentioned this before. You have to install this for every different course that you build. So it has to make sure it's installed, and you have to go through this process the entire every single time. It is also going to show you all the things that are there. So if you want to go, this is part of the kind of the user experience in the user interface and kind of playing around with this. You have some abilities to change what your actual course looks like as well. You can move these in different directions. You can add different things inside here as well. So if there's other things that are inside here, you can deal with these as well. So that's kind of important to understand in terms of visually, if you want to visually rearrange these things because your kids either don't use certain things, they use other things more, other things more often or whatever, you can do that as well inside here. All right, so you got that deal there. So I am going to go back. And before I show you where this actually is, I'm going to show you here again. So let's go and do that. All right. So before I show you how to put this inside here, you're going to see that I want to go and set up inside of, not set up inside the thing. The module is going to be here, brand new you. That's the module that I'm going to be giving the kid the evidence for. And you can take that off if you don't want to, all right? Because if we look at the paragraph that's there, that paragraph is very important to be mindful of because if you don't add evidence to as a condition, kids are not going to be able to get the badge. So badge will be automatically awarded once the student has submitted a evidence URL. What does that mean? I got to have a link from something that says, hey, this kid did this work on a website, a blog post, or whatever, all right, and met the module completion requirements. Meaning, if you ask that the kid, the only way the kid can go to the next module is if they passed the test at 80% or whatever, or they did a certain action or whatever. Those are the only two things that are going to allow that kid to acquire that badge, all right? The evidence URL will be published in the award badge when they share it. So they'll see the evidence. They'll have their badge in the evidence URL underneath of it. They'll say, hey, you got the I've been branded badge, and here's the link to the thing that shows that I did it. All right. If you're using portfolios in your class, it's going to be publicly accessible as well if you're using Canvas with the portfolio situation there. All right. So that's kind of important. Again, kind of the reading the fine print deal. If you click that, all that information is going to be there. If you don't, the kid's just going to get the badge. All right, regardless of whether they completed what they needed to complete. So, all right, we're going to click that thing. All right, cool. All right, so let's go and add our friend here. And I'm going to go to badges. So when you hit the badges button over here on the side, again, has to be integrated. If it isn't integrated, you're not going to see this stuff pop up. And let's see. Come on, sister, show me my stuff. Pretty please, with sugar on top. Pretty please.
So you went to settings and you added this as an app.
Yep.
And as part of the setup, you have to add that special secret and key that you get from your Badger account.
Absolutely.
Then you can add a badge to a module, but there's an extra step you have to go through in order to get it to show up correctly.
So in order to add the actual badge, you got to say, look, fam, the badges, and this only sets up once you hit that shared key and the secret and whatnot. You'll see that badges button there. And now I'm going to say, cool. Side meet you keep it comical. That was the module I wanted to set up, right? I'm going to go and say, which badge do I want to have the kids do what they need to do? I don't know. I can also create a new badge inside there so I can actually build it inside here as well. So if you just like need to do something off the cuff, like, oh, totally forgot that. Name of the badge, description really quickly, put your PNG right in there, hit create, it'll do the same thing there. But I'm just going to choose one I already have, and I'll delete it afterward. I'm going to call this Saint Nick with the gifts. Great. Now, you'll notice that the evidence is required for this one. Get to keep on giving. I have no evidence for that one. All they need to do is complete the module and they receive it. If you add any evidence, again, it's going to be whatever evidence you required and completion of the module in addition. So you can deal with that deal there. You can look at the progress as you go through, any leaderboards and all that kind of stuff as you need to. So I got that straight. Cool, fine, dandy. And you'll see now that it works. So great, there it is. I now want to add evidence to require it. If I go back to my badges now, you will see that once it loads.
Also, lol at that badge.
Yes, I mean that is what I'm calling it. Saying nips with the gifts. Required. Now, once I get that evidence is going to be required, you're going to have to turn in the GIF or whatever it was in order to a link to that GIF or whatever it is in order for you to receive that badge. Again, you can turn those off at any point by simply just visiting where you set it up again, clicking claim badge here. I don't want that, and it'll change the situation. So as soon as the kid completes the module, they instantaneously are given the badge. And again, lots of steps for a very simple process, unfortunately, but that's how you would integrate both your Badger and your Canvas so you can be successful that way.
And I'd say that like just like everything, and I think maybe we mentioned this last time too, it will be kind of frustrating the first time, but if you do it enough, it'll get to be really easy, and then you won't have to worry about it, and it'll be a really great way of growing your skills and adding something to give new dimension to your work.
But also like not going it alone with that as well. So in terms of building the badges and all that kind of stuff like that, like getting with your grade level team, getting with some like-minded people that are like, hey, this is really dope. Stuff like that. At this point, like we should be really, really harnessing, and this is one of the things I was disappointed with Superintendent Jara's op-ed. He wasn't talking about people collaborating and people like reaching out with one another and to ease the mental health burden. He was simply saying the only solution to this problem is, oh, you're gonna create less opportunities for learning because if you look at the current plan, the kids are going to receive 2 hours really of instruction, especially if you're in secondary, 2 hours of live instruction a week, which is less than what they would be receiving right now in terms of the distance. And so you're going to be receiving less education at this point, and then a very weird social experience, right? Like your kids are not going to be able to be social in the way that they used to be social. You're going to have this weird Gattaca type situation going on in classrooms, which is to me going to be more disturbing, right? Because think about the weird ways you're going to have to go and try to police that. Right? I haven't seen my best friend since March, perhaps. Right? They live on the side. You're gonna tell me I can't hug my best friend. I can't, go sit next to them in my classroom or whatever. What happens if I get anxiety from the fact that me and my best friend aren't in any classes anymore? The only reason I came back to school is to see my best friend. Like you're going to create these spheres of anxiety and of greater mental health issues for our students, rather than because remember you're not going to have the option to pull my friend up on Zoom during the school day and say, hey, I'm gonna, let's just talk as I'm doing the math. But nah, that's not an option anymore, right? The only option is that I'm in a physical cold room, 6 feet away from somebody else with a mask on, listening to somebody drone on about the quadratic equation now, instead of being at my house where I could play Xbox in order to escape or something like that. There is no escape once I physically go back to school. So,
there's a really great thread on Twitter. I can't remember what the dude's name was, but he made a really good point that like our assumption is that, or the assumption is that going back hybrid will help mental health issues. Have we looked at if going back will exacerbate mental health issues? If that's genuinely the thing that is, top of mind and most concerning. Because what you said, it's not going to be, I get to hang out with my friends and go to lunch, and it's going to be very prison-like and really depressing with no escape. And how many kids may be doing better because they don't have to be subjected to the daily bullying that they may have been subjected to before? I think the assumption that it will be not only that, but we've seen around the country exactly what happens when we try to go back face to face. There are outbreaks, and then there's the time you spend this time trying to get used to this new model. Then there's an outbreak. Then you go back to distance learning. So now we have to figure out distance learning again. But then things calm down. So now we're going to go back to hybrid again. We need consistency above everything. People are finally feeling like their feet are underneath them. And to take that away is cruel, I really honestly think. In this environment, to inflict further stress upon people is just cruel.
I agree with you 110%. I think that also it's that opportunity where you're losing an ability to be innovative, right? if you push people back into the schools, you're going to stress teachers out and the adults out, right? So you're going to be stressing those people out again. You got teachers who are parents as well. So Lord, God bless you, teachers who are parents, in terms of decisions that you're going to have to make in the next month and a half, 2 months. In terms of, does your student stay at home? Does your student come to school with you? Remember, they can't come to school all 4 days in the hybrid. They can only come to school 2 days. Like, this is, it's. I think it's the other thing, and kind of how we started the show off with, you talking about UX, man. No one was conversed about this. I mean, they didn't talk to teachers and say, hey, look, fam, hey, this is what we talking about doing. It was some people who have no interest in on the bottom levels of school. They didn't come to schools and say, hey, we're going to have some virtual town halls and some conversations with teachers about how things are going to go, and some conversations with the parents and saying, we hear, this is what the parents are saying, this is what the teachers are saying. Let's kind of look at what they're doing. Is there a happy medium that we can strike? Especially with, again, the number of cases rising and not decreasing. Now, I would be totally kind of quasi open to this if we were on the downswing and people were wearing the masks and things were happening like that. But the fact that we haven't got to Thanksgiving, which is a very highly traveled holiday, your Christmas is going to be a highly traveled holiday. New Year's,
40%. 40% of people are saying they plan on traveling and having a family gathering for the holidays. 30% of people say they don't care if they wear a mask and they won't be enforcing it for anyone that they attend with.
And that is totally, I mean, again, I guess those are people's personal reasons to do what they need to do. But I think it's a very interesting sign of leadership for you to know those things as being factual and say, you know what, for whatever convenience it's offering me as a superintendent, I'm going to go and force people back in the room, and then not use the caveat that because I believe in this so strongly, I too will be going to physical school every day and sitting down and teaching a course because the mental health thing is so important to me that I want to be a part of that solution. I think that was the most cowardly part of that op-ed, was that it was almost like I'm going to send you all back into the trenches, and I'm going to, not have to deal with that. And so I don't respect that hustle at all.
The school board is still meeting remotely.
Facts.
Until you can meet in person, no one should be forced to go back into a building.
But
also, how many friends do you have that are friends you've never met in person that you've made through video games?
Oh, dude. Like, I mean, I think the other thing that Webb's is very interesting to me, this is a point in time situation, right? This is not something that's going to last forever, hopefully. Like, we are, given some of the scientific breakthroughs and things that are happening right now, we are going to be seeing the end of this, hopefully, by the summer of this school year. Hopefully, right? In addition, we already, the continent of Australia, New Zealand, most of Asia, these people have been living without masks for a while because they follow, like, basic ideas, right? So they got
their shit together.
There is still an opportunity for us to throw the mask on and say we're going to wait this thing out 6 weeks and then we can open school up and everybody's good. The problem is we're not amenable to that. So instead of using this as a laboratory for the rest of the school year to say, right now, if you and notice what has not happened, unfortunately, we have not received any technological training for teachers that to push them forward into how to use 21st century techniques and tools in order to be pedagogically more secure with the 21st century. That hasn't happened. It has been this, we're throwing the deep end, you're a professional, figure it out. People are stressed. Teach your mental health, man. Now, think about you as a teacher. You can't touch your kids. So I'm going to be in a room with you. Can't touch you. All right? And Bobby and Susie and whatever, and I'm not thinking so much of the elementary school. I'm thinking more secondary school. I put people in a situation where those students are bigger than me, and I say, "Hey, you got to be 6 feet apart," and they're like, "Hey, okay, whatever," and they go do it. How does one reconcile with that? Like, what do you do? Like, do you call the police? Do you got, like, if Bob says I'm here at school to be social, and I'm going to sit right next to my best friend, and what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So, totally not. Totally off.
We need an after show called The Rant.
Indeed. But the Badger situation.
Hey, 4 whole people hung in there.
Indeed.
Listening to our rant.
Indeed.
Also, I just want to say, I work remotely and we actively work on ways of team building and connecting. Like, we have a Slack channel that is just random crap that people share. There's articles, there's pictures of kids. We have a whole channel called Pets. Like, those are the things, those are the different ways we haven't tried of having kids connect. So, like, it's a different situation. Like
I
we
don't
have.
think that that's true. I think there's tons of teachers doing that. Web. The problem is,
Oh,
if
I
you're in the
agree.
ivory
It's not
tower,
consistent though.
you're in the
Exactly.
ivory tower. You're not
And
knowing
if
what's going on.
and if we're
But
not that concerned about mental health, why don't we suspend grades for the year? Why don't we cut back on the amount of assignments we're giving people? Why don't we just like make it so that the priority here is human connection so that people do feel supported and feel connected? Like how many of those kids, this was part of the argument in that Twitter thread, which I really got to find. How many kids that are going to be remote only are now going to feel FOMO while they watch other kids on the side of the screen being in person? How are teachers going to juggle trying to pay attention to the online kids and the in-person kids? Like,
how you doing?
you're
Small
just
groups in
layering.
person?
Yeah.
How you doing small groups in person? Like, how you doing that?
Because we don't have the money for dividers. Let me tell you that. Like, how many buildings?
How big is your table for you to be able to do a small group and still do 6 feet?
Yeah.
A kidney table is not 6 feet across, fam.
How many buildings can even support proper ventilation? Like, what about portables?
But those buildings were dirty before COVID. Come on, fam. You ain't cleaned them buildings. Stop lying.
My last year of teaching, we did swabs of the vents in my classroom and put them on Petri dishes. And let me tell you, I can attest to that. They are not clean.
I mean, look, elementary schools have one custodian during the day usually. One person.
Yeah.
That one person is not disinfecting bathrooms, hallways. Nah, fam. And again, we're doing this. And again, another tangent very quickly. Economics, right? So one of the if you don't, Planet Money, greatest podcast of all time. Love Planet Money. Shout out to NPR. But they did a very dope podcast. This is about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Actually, it's not that long ago. It was the beginning up 2.5 years ago. That's how messed up my mind is. This is in March when the pandemic started. Wow.
It feels like 2.5 years ago.
Jesus.
Was it the one about the restaurant in New York that changed their model? That one was really cool.
No, that was pretty dope. But the question of the podcast was, how much is a human life worth? Now,
buckle in, folks.
Right? No,
it's about to get real depressing here.
Oh, no. Actually, like the opposite of depressing. It was mad dope. So the premise of the podcast was, again, how much is a human life worth? And they went back to the early 80s. And there was a chemical that was highly flammable, and some people got hurt or whatever. And in terms of the payout for the families, they were like, look, fam, we need to have a number in order to say, this is how much human life is worth. So when people start to think about, hey, should I put this dangerous chemical out? Do I use seatbelts? Do I put this on it, whatever? They have a number they can put into an equation to say, okay, cool. This is how much it would cost if these people were damaged. Profit, people damaged. Let's make a decision, right? And so the number was like $200,000 or something. Like, it was real low. And so I forget the gentleman's name. He's an economist at Vanderbilt. They came to him in the Reagan administration came to him in like 1983. George Bush comes to him and says, look, we need a number, dude. A number that you're going to be able to say, not only how much is this person worth now, but calculating all future earnings. How much is a human life worth actually? And so the number is $10 million, all right? So one human life is worth $10 million. So when you see all the safety protocols and everything done, they are saying that one person is worth $10 million. So they're putting that into the equation to say, all right, cool. If the potential harm to people is not lower than this N equals whatever times 10 million, can't do it, fam. That's how legally the legal standard is. So they brought that back to the COVID situation because people were talking about shutting the economy down. And again, how much is it worth? And he says, it's not going to be, you have to shut the economy down until every working human, adult in America, times 10 million, all right? So 200 million people working or whatever, 300 million times 10 million. The only time you could turn it back on is that when that number, the damage is higher than that number. So he said you can, in theory, shut the economy down indefinitely because when it comes down to humans and humans being a function of being able to generate wealth and capital, that's what the deal is. Also, part of that is the idea of your job is really your job times how dangerous it is, how much they pay you, right? So, construction workers make a lot of money in terms of per hour wage because that's a very dangerous job. Policemen, you have a premium in terms of overtime, etc., because it's a very dangerous job. There is no hazard pay being calculated for our custodians, right? The custodian would have to clean the entire school by themselves with, potential issues, and they're not being compensated at any higher level than they were pre-COVID, which teachers not compensated at any higher level than pre-COVID. Your FASAs, your support staff, your principal, no one is being compensated at a higher level than pre-COVID. So economically, this is an untruth. Like, I should be getting some hazard pay in terms of how things work. But again, it's a very interesting conversation to have, in that it seems to be, I just want people to go back to school with no real reasoning as to why this is the fact, and being oblivious to what reality is.
Well, and also the average human is bad with large numbers. Like, that also doesn't help. I think a lot of the social media calculations on solutions to these problems are just that. They're folks who aren't super well versed. Like, the human brain in general doesn't do well with really big numbers or percentages or whatever. I think the average person is probably even worse about large numbers and percentages and whatnot. So it's very I don't know that level of calculating is going into some of the decisions folks are making. Yeah. It's a very vague, nebulous, definitely, the economy versus people versus, it's like, and it's a complex problem. Like, we have to acknowledge that it is a complex problem that does not have an overly positive outcome no matter what you pick. I think that's also something we're not particularly used to in the United States, is picking from, like, a dog poo burger and a cow poo burger. Like, I don't know why they're burgers. Like, anyway, really nice. Like, they're both terrible options. Like, we're just not used to that. We're used to, there is some way for us to come out with a positive, an overly positive, like, outcome. And we just don't have that in this case. It's like, it's a crappy situation, rock and a hard place and whatnot.
Yeah, but I mean, the interesting thing about the podcast was what administration did this. The Reagan administration, our conservative administration, said, okay, cool, we need an absolute number for how much. So that's where, again, when people start talking about politics and whatnot, like, look, I will say there's a number of things that I don't agree with the Republicans with. There's some things I don't agree with Democrats with. But when you see people trying to do things that at the heart are positive, at the heart are people-centered, you start to say, okay, cool, let's get behind that, rather than being just straight divisive, just for, like, fairy tale reasons, right? Reasons that don't make any sense. And in terms of the poo burgers, like, we could have avoided the poo burger had we wore masks. Like,
that's true.
It didn't have to be a poo burger. We could be back out chilling in school right now, right? So,
wow, that's a whole other thing. By the way, did you know that when Carter conceded to Reagan, he actually conceded before the polls even closed that day? And Reagan was so surprised that he was actually in the shower when Carter called to concede. I think it was Carter. And Nancy had to get him out of the shower so that he could take the call.
I mean, there was a level of decency, right? Like, hey, I lost. I mean, I'm angry that I lost, but hey, you want, like, I don't know.
He didn't seem like he was angry that he lost. He was like, yeah, can we just get this over? Because, like, I don't want to do this job anymore.
Just in terms of, like, the general human sentiment in life is, I lost. If you and I are competing and you beat me, I'm like, all right, that sucks that I lost. All right, cool, what you got me, right? Even video games and stuff like that. Like, all right, cool, this person just beat me. Doesn't make me angry that I didn't win the prize. Just absolutely positively makes me angry, because everybody wants to win. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, you beat me today, but guess what, Webbs? I'm coming back. I'm going to beat you the next time we play, or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to Stacey Abrams this piece.
Indeed. Okay. Indeed. All right,
We're so over.
Way over. Going on tangents and whatnot.
Hey, Thursday, we still got people hanging in there.
Indeed. Thursday, kind of looking at, like, we're going to try to do things that are, at least at the end of the show, more Canvas-centered. Because Canvas isn't going anywhere. It's the state learning management system. if you are a CCSD teacher, if you notice at the beginning of your, let me just share my screen really, really quickly, just to make sure that our CCSD heads, go ahead, Webs.
Also, Canvas is not inherently evil. It's a really overwhelming tool with a lot of features, but it has a lot of good features. And this is coming from someone who, when I first was introduced to Canvas, absolutely hated it. I feel like it's grown, which is good, and it has a lot of capabilities, but it can at times be overwhelming. So I say focus on like thinking in modules, think of things a little bit longer than day to day. If you try to do things day to day in Canvas, you're just going to get a headache, especially our elementary friends.
So kind of think of they have these little notices at the top of the screen all the time. So if anything's coming down the pipe, you'll look there. But also, like, we cannot hammer enough the fact that you could get ahead right now. Like, for the next school year, if you build all your stuff in Canvas, it's something that's not going away. It'll be here forever and ever. You can blend your classroom in like the truest sense next school year by having a scenario in which I can do the small groups with the kids that need me. I can do mini lessons, have all the stuff already recorded. The other kids are working on what they need to record because, again, your kids are going to have Chromebooks that can bring back and forth to school next year. They're going to have internet at home for the most part here at this point. They could go back and forth doing some very dynamic work. You could use your in-front time for answering questions, for team building, for having fun, with the idea that the kids can go at their own pace through your curriculum, and you can get it all set up now. So that you as a teacher going from 2020 on out, your stress level could be really, really low once we get back in front of kids. But if we don't utilize this time very well, then you're going to end up with the same situation. The kids are behind. It's not with that. You're not going to catch all these kids up next school year trying to rush. And I think that's the other thing with the superintendent's very strange message through that deal. Well, the kids are behind. Well, you're not going to put these kids into a hybrid classroom and catch them up. That is not going to happen, fam. So
yeah, it's only going to make it worse.
As much as you're trimmed, you're going to take shell shock soldiers and say, we're going to get you back out there. We're going to. This is a wash. This school year, let people go at their own pace, and the next school year, build it so that kids can go at their own pace. If they're missing things from third grade and their fourth grade, great, you could go at your own pace, Bob. And Miss Jones is here, so when you don't understand something, you and I can face it without having to impact the educations of anybody else in the room, because you and I are having this conversation. And I think
also that's an artificial measure. Like that's an artificial thing that we impose, saying that they're falling behind.
Yeah.
As human beings, like, we learn things, and you know what? Those kids, they will be fine. They will be absolutely fine. Yeah. They'll figure it out. Like, this is completely an artificial problem of them being behind.
That's absolutely true. And I think that's also something that needs to be yelled from the top of steeples, that chronology does not determine what you know and when you don't know it. Like, again, you're talking about you went back to go get your orange belt in your mid-30s. Well, that's not shameful. That's just, hey, I didn't know that karate was a thing that I wanted to do. I want to try it. I shouldn't be shamed for being late to the party. And I think that's something else we do very, very poorly in education. You should know how to do X, Y, Z by this time. And if you don't,
society.
Facts.
Because if you pick up a new hobby as an adult, you often get shamed because you weren't into it when you were a kid. So you can't possibly be into this thing now. And so adults don't want to go into try new things because you're going to be shamed by the group of people who have been doing it since they were 5.
Yeah, I mean, and I really would like to know, and I've asked this multiple times to multiple like experts. It's like, all right, look, fam. In the grand scheme of things, are you telling me that individuals who are 30 years old, right? If I'm 30 years old and I just learned how to do computer science, right, to be a software developer, are there any measures that say that I can't be as effective of a software engineer eventually as somebody who's been doing that for 15 years?
No.
Of course not, right? That would be silly to say that it depends on when you pick something up, that suddenly a technical career there where I could read and teach myself how to do it, I could not do that equal to or as well as or better than someone who's been doing it for 10 or 15 years.
Because also, just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you do it well.
and also doesn't mean that you are going, this is kind of that 10th man situation again, right? It doesn't mean that you see it from different angles. Somebody who's a novice to something is going to see something and say, hey, my previous experience says that perhaps I can do that a little bit better than you can. And there's a book called Always Be an Amateur. Really dope book. Looking at things from like, look, fam, I don't want to be a professional in this. If the amateur doesn't know what they're doing is wrong, which can have some very beautiful effects in certain things. A lot of the things that I kind of mess around and play around with is because I have no idea how to do it. I mean, think about like if you've ever went to the arcade. I'm dating myself here. Arcades playing super like Tekken or Double Dragon. Anything. You smash buttons first, fam, because you don't have those things memorized, and eventually you have all the moves, special moves memorized. My nephews and stuff kick my behind playing the Xbox. But like back in the arcade, when I first played Tekken, I had no idea what I was doing. I was smashing buttons and moving to keep the thing around. Marvel vs. Capcom. Go ahead, Webs.
Buddhism calls that Shoshin.
By
Beginner's mind. Always approaching something with a beginner's mind.
And
on that note,
let's go ahead and end this one. Let me do this.
All right.
Thursday, more Canvas stuff. It'll be funky. We went an hour and a half, which is kind of dope. Actually, I mean, we don't really have. There are no constraints. This is IRL for real. So it is what it is. Check us also. Q has a great conference that's coming up in February. So check that out. Check the Facebook page, the Hoodlums Facebook page for all that information. We run it behind the scenes, but there's going to be some very dope stuff to deal with. I knew I was going to do that, but it is what it is. Some very dope stuff to deal with. So check that out. Anything else that's on the radar, Webs?
Not that I can think of.
No, nothing else on the radar.
There's our Patreon. You can always subscribe to our Patreon.
For Patreon fans, we're dropping some, and it'll probably be late on the night tomorrow, dropping some overlays to make your streams for your students or help your students make their streams. Those will be totally free to our Patreon homies. For everyone else, they'll be in our shop. I've got a batch of badges that I just need to zip. So if you don't want to make any badges, they'll be our Patreon users. You'll get those for free. Everyone else, they'll be in our shop. So if you don't want to spend some time building badges, I made some for you. You can go and cop those later on tonight. Tomorrow, we'll put them on our Facebook page. All right. God bless America. Do what you need to. Basotho people, I got to learn how to say in Basotho how to say goodbye. That's my challenge by Thursday. All right.
That's your 1% better. Bye, everybody.